and welcome to another day in the Milky Way, and we're mobile today. So welcome with my co-host Lucky Stone and our special guest Delamar Succi. Thank you for being here.
Pleased to be here.
It's a pleasure, like always.
And we're still on because the solar storm has not killed the internet or the satellites or life on Earth as we know it. That's what we're here to talk about today. Yet. That's right. When does it really get bad? I hope you guys know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think it's going to be another Carrington event. You know, they've forecast something of this type since forever, right? Since the Carrington event itself. I mean, there have been minor instances of like solar flares that have interfered with ground-based electrical systems, but these have been few and far between. For the most part, what we're seeing right now is a classical case of fear-mongering and disinformation, because you would think that after all these decades of information and experience that we've had with electrical systems, that there would be fail-safes in place to prevent just such a thing from happening.
But the last one happened so long ago that, you know, it's, people explain how Carrington is and why it is. And I mean, it's not just your normal solar flare. It's an X-class flare, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And X-class being extra intense. I mean, they have various scales by which they measure that. They also measure different types of particles that come off it, different types of frequencies, like X-rays, protons, electrons, that sort of thing. And basically what we're dealing with is plasma. And plasma is just a fancy word for fire. Really. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And they say it's something like on the order of 10 to the 21 kilos of material that's being ejected, but that's over a huge distance. That's if you accept the solar system model as being real, and those distances as being real, and those masses as being real. You know, which a lot of people have started to question in recent years, where, you know, in all likelihood, we're not getting the accurate information about the solar Earth distance and various other measurements that we've been fed since childhood, like, you know, the sun being 93 million miles away, you know, the moon being 250,000 miles away, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But in the Carrington event itself, it affected all of these electrical lines, the telegraph line that they just strung across the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean burnt up. And so my question is, why haven't they, why did they start out with, hey, this wasn't a good idea. Maybe we should start protecting it right away.
Well, because they didn't have the experience. They didn't know. They didn't know that such a thing could happen. But then again, it might not have been even a solar event, because what they actually monitored, it could not have affected the Earth in that time period, because they don't travel necessarily at the speed of light. It takes a couple of days for anything that you see on the sun to actually affect the Earth. Because if you accept a conventional solar system model, the Earth goes around the sun. If you were to look at it from top down, from north to south, goes counterclockwise, or I should say clockwise, and it rotates counterclockwise, right? So does the sun. Yeah. Sun rotates roughly once every 27 days, whereas the Earth rotates once a day, but it takes 365 rotations to make one complete path around the sun. So if you accept those measurements, then, you know, what those two scientists, one of whom was named Carrington, saw could not have caused the damage. Most likely that was caused by like an errant geomagnetic anomaly, and those have been recorded as well. Because for the longest time we've known about such a thing called telluric currents, and telluric currents are everywhere on Earth. Basically, if you take two metal rods and put them anywhere anywhere sink them anywhere in the earth and put a voltmeter between them, you'll measure a voltage, right? And the farther they are apart, the greater the voltage that you'll measure. Granted, these are small voltages; they're like on the order of millivolts. But here's the thing: you could set up a whole array of them, where you have like a whole bunch of these, and you hook them up in series and in parallel. And in doing so, you could set it up at the right voltage that you need. You could conceivably have like a backyard filled with these poles connected with wires and have it give you 120 volts. Of course, it's not going to be AC, it's going to be DC, so you're going to need an inverter to be able to use that in your house, but you could still generate free power this way.
And
And
so why do we put up windmills and have generators when we could just get free power?
well, because like I said, it's not that much that you can get from using the system, and you're using up way more land and way more area to do this in than you would operating a conventional power plant of any type, whether that's coal powered, hydroelectric, nuclear, or whatever.
I mean, really, put them underneath houses, and we could put the top of them, and nobody would know the difference.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you did it underground, yeah. I mean, there's still a lot of things we don't know about telluric currents and how they change and why they change. And one of the ways that you could keep track of these is through what's known as ground radio, where everybody knows that a radio needs an antenna to receive its signal, right, from the ether. Well, uh, if you take that same antenna and plunge it into the ground, you'll start picking up different radio stations, some of which are remarkably far away, like thousands of miles away. Except that it's not going to do that in a consistent fashion. Some days you'll be able to get certain stations, some days you won't, and the stations will start moving, right? But over a period of time, those stations will tend to stay in the same place, and you'll be able to get radio reception without an antenna.
Huh. Interesting. I did not know that. I
Yeah,
did not know that.
yeah.
I know we have lots of radio signals out there. Um,
Hmm.
but so you don't think that event was a solar event with a solar
No, not
flare
no, not
coronal ejection?
necessarily. Like I said, because they saw it on the 1st of September, and it affected the Earth on the 1st and 2nd of September, 1859, right? And like I said, since these things don't travel at the speed of light, there's no way that it could have hit the Earth that quickly.
Wow. So we've been lied to all this time.
Most likely, yeah. I mean, if there's anything consistent in this world, is that they lie to us all the time. We don't really know the truth.
Wow. You just blew my mind on that.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and you all know Wayne Steiger, right? Well, Wayne Steiger did his own experiments with telluric energy, where he put metal rods in the ground and measured the difference between them and measured the voltage, right? Anybody can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. This is absolutely true. Um, but now that this thing is coming, I heard that there was problems with the satellites, problems with connections in internet, other things that were happening. I don't know. I didn't experience anything here.
I didn't either.
Yeah, and Lucky, you get
No,
anything?
no,
Nothing.
but remember, if gives them a good excuse to play around to see what they can do, and have an excuse for it.
Good
Uh,
point.
Yeah.
a lot of things happen that, like, oh, everything's falling apart, everything's going terrible, and then the people in the middle go, that didn't happen where I am, and they were they're in the same area, but they were unaffected, while the people supposedly, a couple miles away, get detrimental situation coming on, tragedy coming on. So I think they test things, see what they can do, and they do it small scale here or there. But of course, they blow it up to like it's large scale, and use that as for their own propaganda.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, because it might just be I might be mistaken, and our leaders might be good quality people that that have love us and have our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
I
point.
know they got the best interest at heart.
They
They're all
love
looking
us.
out for our our welfare. I know it. You're right.
I remember the last major power outage that happened in the United States right before I left the U.S. As a matter of fact, happened in 2004, and I forget what they ascribed that to. I think it was some kind of hacking, but when you looked at the map of the affected area, it was more or less a perfect triangle extending from Montreal was like the northern tip of the triangle, and it was like triangular shape, and it affected the New York City area where I was living at that time.
Oh, I think I remember that. That was back in the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there.
No, no, this would have been 2004. But I remember the
Oh,
one that
okay.
happened before that in New York City as well. I remember the one that happened in the 70s.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know there was one in the 70s. Can't
Yeah,
remember
that
when.
happened for that was like 3 days, 3 days of no power, and that pretty much devolved into total chaos. There was like looting, rioting, food going bad, all kinds of huge social upheaval, uh, and that too could have been a test. I mean, we don't know because, like I said, there's got to be measures in place to prevent this type of thing, and when even a power supply on an ordinary computer is is sensitive enough that it needs a surge protector. I'm using two surge protectors. uh every house has a fuse, right? You
Yep.
need one. I'm sure before the Carrington event, I'm sure that homes that had power didn't have fuses because they didn't think that it would be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Why would there be a problem? I mean, back in the day, didn't most everything ran on? There was very little AC. There was a lot of DC though.
Yeah, there was DC, except DC you run into
The
problems the
telegraphs
longer.
ran off of DC too.
Yes,
There you
that's
go.
why
Yeah.
that's why you have to have relay stations relaying the information from one to the other, because the with DC you run into power the longer the cable is, the longer the wire is, the greater the resistance.
Yes. Yes. The greater the resistance. I
Hmm.
agree. I agree. Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to sign off for a little bit, and I will be back very shortly. Okay.
Okay. Drive safe.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Yep. Bye.
Hmm.
Yeah. That
Uh,
New York. I think the first one in the 70s. That was definitely unpredicted. But they
Hmm.
used that to learn from there, and what happened in early 2000s. That was a test because the way it was, and of course they had a great excuse. They said that it was the relay stations didn't talk to each other, and they had a whole story behind it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
old things, and they had a great story. But I think that was another test so that they could see what
Hmm.
people do on the short term because it didn't last very long. They fixed it within I think it was 18 hours. I think it was something like it wasn't a full day, but it was close.
Yeah, yeah. Even though it was pretty long, I remember. Yeah, even the Bee Gees at that time came out with that song, "And the Lights All Went Out in Massachusetts."
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's a reference to that event.
It hit the whole Northeast, yeah. But the thing is, the
Mhm.
one in 2004, that it was a triangle. It was a certain sector, while the
Yes.
one in the 70s was just knocked out the whole Northeast.
Yeah, but what do you suppose caused that one in 2004? Because some people have speculated that it could have been the overflight of a massive triangular-shaped UFO.
Oh,
Because
I think
power.
yeah, I think it just knocked something in. I think it happened in. I think it was caused by something from the waterfall, Niagara Falls, and
Yeah.
it just
Hmm.
had a major surge. It just knocked everything out of alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
But if the UFO was, because I had heard that there's in Alaska there is a pyramid that the UFOs to use to charge themselves. And
Mhm.
if the UFO said, "Hey, I can't make it. We'll take some of this power from this little thing off this waterfall. Your Earthlings don't need it," and they messed
Mhm.
everything up. That could have happened, because I do know that they run on some kind of charge that we don't understand. But
Sure, and it's been
hypothetical.
documented that the appearance of a UFO does cause power outages, or like people's cars' electrical system goes dead, or
Oh
camera
yeah,
batteries go dead, or
yes.
electronics batteries get depleted, stuff like that. So, it could be because why else would the affected area be in the shape of a perfect triangle? Like, how do you
Mhm.
explain that?
That's a good point. But we really don't know how much let's just say the off-worlders are working with our government, so we don't know who's in control of this, because
Hmm.
supposedly, the governments are working with the off-worlders and back and forth, but we really don't know who's in control. We definitely know it's not government officials. Government officials don't have any power. It's either
Yeah,
some kind of big corporation or some kind of you know you know power.
exactly. Some type of gray eminence, as it's been referred to. Because, yeah, it doesn't make sense. The elected leaders do not, like Biden, he's practically senile. I don't believe for a second that he's actually in charge of anything. I think he's just a puppet.
Yeah, I mean, back when the second George W. I don't think he did anything at all. I think it was all through Cheney. I think Cheney,
Hmm.
ruled the country
Hmm.
behind the scenes, and of course he is a major puppet for all corporations. That's a known thing. He's got his money. He doesn't. He's not even a puppet. Maybe he might be a puppet master because
Hmm.
just money comes out of his ears. He can do. He shot a guy in the face,
I know. I heard
and,
about that.
and
Yeah.
everyone laughed about it. Everyone
Hmm.
laughed. Oh, you got to watch out for that Cheney. But
Hmm.
I mean, if any other American did that, it would be there would be an accident, but you still would you suffer?
Yeah.
Anyone else would suffer, but Cheney
Yeah.
was a joke.
Hmm. Hmm. I know. I agree. I agree. But contrast that with the presidency of the first Bush, where he was obviously in charge because he was from the deep state. He was a former
Oh,
CIA director. But the contrast being Dan Quayle, like, how did he get in?
it's a
How
good.
could somebody, how could somebody like Dan Quayle ever make it to the president of the Senate, which is what the vice president really is?
Well, I think they knew that he the way to protect George Bush was to put some kind of person that no one would actually want.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because let's just say they did something and then they impeached George Bush or something happened, and
Hmm.
then Quayle became president.
Hmm.
Because he's a numbskull, but really, what kind of skeletons are in his closet to impeach him? Except being an idiot, you really,
Hmm.
there's not much you could do with the uncle. So, the problem with the government, it's such a chess game, and you don't know who's a pawn and who's a rook and who's a knight. It
Hmm.
gets so confused. Sometimes you figure out, oh, I understand. Then the rules change.
Hmm. Exactly. Well, it's just like with the whole party politics thing.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
all one uniparty. There is no real difference between the Democrats and Republicans in the United States, and that holds true for most countries. Like for example, here in Germany, the citizens don't get to vote for who the president or the prime minister is going to be. You can only vote for a political party, and then the party decides on who they are going to proffer as their candidate for president. So it's all taken over by the parties. And what are parties? I mean, they're private business interests, private organizations. So since when do these people have so much sway over like who gets to govern us? That goes to show you that there really is no democracy. But that said, I would say that you don't really want to live in a system that's 100% democratic because most people, most of the voters, are idiots. Why are they idiots? They're kept in the dark on purpose because you can't tell the public everything. Not given the state of international affairs where there are state secrets that have to be kept secret. Otherwise it all crumbles.
I don't think there's ever been a democracy. It's
No.
under the Greek democracy, that perfect thing. No, those were landowners and the people. They were very small. There was no democracy. It was a small bunch of landowners who ruled
Hmm.
over a bunch of poor people. I mean, Sparta could actually kill their actual people who live there and call them helots. They could murder them every so often, and it was fine. And they actually was expected to murder a few just to keep them under control. And
Hmm.
Athens again, the people who did all the work, they didn't get to vote. It was the people who owned the land, and it was democracy is a fairy tale. That's all it is. It's always been a fairy tale. It's a good thing to tell the people, oh, we're in a democracy, when really, anytime there's a democratic vote, it never goes anywhere.
No. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And what you pointed out with ancient Greece, only the elites, only the noble class could vote, and only the noble class could candidate for office, and the candidates themselves were selected at random. So you couldn't like plan on a career in government or whatever. You were selected by like a lot system, right? Which is actually a better system than the one we have today because at this point, the only people who select for these positions of self-select for these positions of power are psychopathic individuals, where like 98% of them would qualify as being either sociopathic or psychopathic.
All true.
I always say that they should take those candidates and select them out of the phone book, kind of
Yeah.
randomly and just page
Yeah.
through. You're going to be
I agree.
congressman for the next 2 years.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
the way
I
it is.
agree. You would actually have a better outcome with a system like that, where you would have like some 3-year-old with a pen like stabbing a phone book than the system that we have right now.
Yeah, because they're groomed. They go to schooling to be politicians. They
Hmm.
literally don't have any other job.
Hmm.
They become politicians, and
Yeah.
they're like for the rest of their lives. Some of them.
Yeah, and exactly. And like, how useful is that as a skill? That of politician. I would say that that's like one of the most useless professions in the world. I mean, when I run into a problem with my hot water heater, who do I call? Do I call, guess who? Am I going to call a doctor? Am I going to call a bricklayer, the butcher, the candlestick maker? No. Or a politician? No. I'm going to call a plumber, right? Those are the
Right.
kind of people I have on my speed dial. My auto mechanic, uh, electrician, people like that, but not politicians. No.
Well, speaking of the politicians, how come with this solar event have they not passed, some kind of spending bill to upgrade our power system to prevent anything bad happening? What is the logic behind that?
Oh, I understand that,
Okay.
because they want it to happen so they can be the hero.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's all it is. We've seen the doom and gloom thing, that if it goes, we'll lose power for like 3 months because these things can only be made in China. The big thing, they have to ship them all the way to China, and we wouldn't have power for 3 months for a big part of the United States. I think that's just propaganda. I think the truth is that if push came to shove, that we could throw things together. That if we were really that there was going to be no power for 3 months, we would figure things out, and figure things out fast.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
until that happens, really, there's no real drive for the politicians, because again, they're not saving anybody. There's nothing to save. There's nothing to be a hero about. So of course they're not going to vote on anything unless they're going to be the big hero. Everything is made up. Democrats, Republicans, they pretend to fight. Okay, because one wants to be the hero, and then okay, you'll be the hero in 3 months. You can fight us, and we'll give in there. You give in there. We'll both look good in the end. But again, this power grid thing, no one wins. If it falls apart here or there, at that point, they can be the hero because money's useless. Money's made up, so they can, oh, we're gonna have to raise the debt ceiling a little bit more. Oh, it's gonna be so tough. We got to fight each other to it's all made up. Money means nothing. It's all by one corporation. You see it prints the money.
hmm Yeah, I totally agree. I also agree. I also think that they wouldn't let the power grid go down, and I think it's exaggerated because without the power grid, the whole surveillance state goes down. The whole
Yes, yes,
enforcement
yes.
arm. How are they going to collect taxes from us, right?
True.
How are they going to keep tabs on us? They can't because it's all like electronic reporting, especially with like sales tax. That's all reported electronically these
I think
days.
that's the worst thing about American taxes is because I filed my taxes and I had a big bill because I didn't pay enough last year. Okay, fine. I received a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, guess what? You miscalculated. You still owe us $110 more." Well,
Mhm,
I would have liked that letter so that I wouldn't have had to run through all the tax forms and figure everything out because they knew from the beginning how much I knew, how I owed.
mhm,
I had to fill out the paper and they go, "Yeah, you made a mistake." No, they could have told me that, okay, this, and then if you want to fight it, then file the paperwork. American
mhm.
tax system is all made up just so the accountants, H&R Block and everything can get their money from the people. I didn't.
Exactly.
I did the free way because every American can, file your taxes free. You just have to punch in everything individually and again make a mistake by $110 because I don't even understand. I still don't understand why I missed $110 where that came from. But I'm like, you know what, $110, here you go, leave me alone.
Yeah, and the mere fact that they know, or right, according
Mhm.
to our data, right, it's like, why don't you just send me a bill?
Absolutely. He said
The
it in
whole.
January. Said you owe us by, send it the bill by January something, January
hmm
31st. Said just pay us by April 14th and we'll be square.
hmm
And if you
hmm
don't, then we're gonna charge you. You can make a deal before then, or you can figure things out. But we demand payment by April 14th or something on the side. I would have
hmm
been so happy rather than have to put in everything, my stuff and my house bills and my state taxes here and there, and I had to push everything in. And I'm like, okay, I think I did it right because all I do is just punch in the data from each of the forms, and I was just importing them. I put in the heads of each one. Okay, but $110 I think was because I underpaid on certain months because the way they calculated it, and
hmm
it was like a fee somewhere. The government's making money hand over fist. Once the little people, corporations, they pay nothing. The actual
Yeah.
workers, we pay all the thing, and somehow the trickle down economics thing is supposed to help us all.
Yeah.
Well, F
I,
that.
I
F them all.
totally. Yeah. Totally agree. And the reason they don't just send you a bill is because they want you to screw yourself, right?
Oh,
They
yeah,
could say, "Oh, well, you calculated it yourself, right?
that's the truth.
And
Well,
you
no,
signed it, right? You signed it under penalty of perjury that this data is correct,
well,
right?"
it's twofold because the actual IRS already had a system, and but the TurboTax and H&R Block got together and says, no, 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 please don't do that. Please don't do the free thing. We'll lose all our money. And they go, well, you're gonna have to have an option for them to file free through you. And they go, yeah, we'll do
hmm
that. And they didn't. And of course, they had a big fine, but
hmm
no people got any money. The
hmm
government got more money because they didn't, weren't nice to people and made them they charged something that should have been free for
hmm
years. Oh,
hmm
the whole tax system is we get messed on left and right. Just the little people, only little people. Big
hmm
corporations, they don't pay anything because they know how to throw their money around. I
hmm
mean, Trump doesn't pay money, and they were so mad about it, but they didn't do anything about it. Reason why Trump didn't pay taxes because he followed what the rules they had. He had lawyers to do all
Exactly.
that shit.
Exactly, exactly. And plus, there's people in the United States that are way wealthier than Trump, who
Oh,
would be affected very negatively if there were actual tax rules in effect where he would have to pay any taxes, right?
absolutely,
So,
100%. Yes.
plus, the fact that they don't just send you a bill means they put the burden of proof on you, right? Where let's say the government made a mistake, right? And they said, okay, pay us this amount when in reality you owe less, and you pay that and said, okay, then they can't go back and say like, oh wait, we made a mistake, right? You owe us another $110. They can't do that if they themselves make out the bill. But this way, they put the burden of proof on you, the taxpayer.
True.
And they can go back at any time. There's no statute of limitations, and they could screw you for something that you didn't even do.
That's true.
An
Very
honest
true.
mistake. Very honest mistakes. That's
Yeah.
the bad part. I mean, you hear about that where people don't pay $1.10 or something, and in 5 years they let them know, and they said, well, but the interest on that, the penalties on that, and this, you owe us $100,000 now. Pay up. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to write a check and say, sure, I'll just write you a check for that $10 or $1.10 that you didn't tell me about 10 years ago or whatever it is. And how was I supposed to know to pay it?
Yeah, well, a lot of people nowadays have caught on, and they're simply not filing a tax return. Not. Because I'm pretty sure there's no law that requires you to do that, and the only way they make most people file it is because they take out more from your check than they should be taking out, so they force you to file to get that excess back, right? That overpayment. But if you don't file it, you can't be held liable for perjury because you didn't sign anything, because you didn't file any form.
This is true.
And like I said, if you really want my money, you're gonna have to send me a bill. Don't expect me to like create my own bill that I pay.
We were trained rats in a cage, pretty much.
Yeah. When you realize that the American colonists rebelled against the 3% tax, against the 3% tax, compare that to how many taxes we pay. These days, like I live in Germany. Here in Germany, my God, it's like I pay close to 75% tax when you factor in. Well, first of all, property taxes are negligible. I only pay like $300 per house per year, or euros per year for property tax. But everything else, in addition to which you pay the so-called Kirchensteuer, where if you're a member of any organized religion, you pay an additional 9%. A lot of people are catching on to that too, and they're stepping out of all these religions, most notably the Catholic Church. When I moved here, I had to declare that I'm an atheist, so I don't have to pay the additional 9%. Because you have like the federal tax. Germany has 16 states, so you pay state tax, and then of course you have VAT, which is like 20%. And then you have like a state-owned power grid, the state-owned water company, the state-owned this. You pay separately for your garbage collection. You pay separately for street cleaning. You pay. So when you add it all up, it's actually very close to 75%. So when you compare that to 3% that the American colonists were supposed to pay to Britain, where if you look at it from a legal point of view, Britain had every right to charge them a tax because it was their enterprise. It was for their money that they sent all those people there, right? As like an extension of the country of England or Holland or whatever country that sent these people there. So the fact that they were rebelling was actually an act of sedition. A few people know this, but 1776 was the birth of the United States, but it was actually the first republic. First president was actually John Hanson, and there were 12 presidents before Washington took office in 1789, where that was actually the second American republic, because that was established by the Constitution, because the first republic was established by the Articles of Confederation, which was a different constitution.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Know what? This is fascinating because how many people out there that are Americans would know this stuff?
I know, and I don't even live in the United States anymore.
That is, yeah.
I wasn't even born there.
Lucky, did you know this?
Unfortunately, yes, I knew all that. Unfortunately, that kind of stuff I studied. I was in advanced history classes, so I knew all about I knew 12 12 presidents before Washington, because they just kept bumping people back and forth. You know, it was more of a premiership than an actual presidency. It was even that was kind of that was a long time ago too. So I might be getting some of those facts wrong too. But
well, you knew more than I did. I remember hearing about it a little bit somewhere, but I never really looked into it. But you're right. The Articles of Confederation there were the ones that, you know, and then after that, but nobody ever talks about that. And it's like that's not on the map, you know. So
that's why like the Declaration of Independence has never been valid. Basically, it was only valid for the period of time up until 1787, when the first republic under the Articles of Confederation, which that document established, ceased to exist, with the acceptance of or institution of the Constitution of the United States, which established the Second American Republic. So, and shortly after that, they discovered electricity, right? And they. The government was one of the first adopters, and to this day, they were actually the ones who developed the internet as a decentralized way of coping with a grid-down situation. You know, the fact that it could be used to convey information almost seemed like a secondary thing at that time. But what they were really after was keeping the power on.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that's back to the power grid and stuff. You know, I dreamed about it all day. Like, well, if the power does shut off, boy, that would be so cool. You know, in a way, you know, we'll be freed up from all these, like you said, the surveillance and the taxes and the, you know, the control of the government. When do you think they, you know? But then I thought, you know, the government would call out martial law and tell everybody to stay in their houses because, you know, as soon as the lights go off and then street lights go off, you know, the people start looting and rioting and doing all kinds of crazy. My water don't work. My electricity ain't on. I'm dying. I don't have my prescriptions. I can't buy food at the store. We didn't have any in the house. The power went off and my freezer don't work. And we're, you know, get the power on. And, you know, where's the news? I can't hear anybody on the radio. What's going on? I mean, the list goes on and on and on for things that they could bitch about, you know, and the politicians, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot. I think the military would be called out in a martial law. And what's your thoughts on that?
Impossible, because how many Americans are there? Okay, you got 330 million Americans, if I'm not mistaken. How many military are there? Less than a million. How many of those are stationed overseas? Quite a few. So how many are left back home, right? How many, if you figure out that ratio, it's like one military guy patrolling 330 people. Is that doable? I don't think so. Not if they decide that they want to get rid of this guy, because don't forget, everybody in the U.S. has a gun, you know, and how many guns can that one soldier use at once, right? He's only got 2 arms, right? So he's got 2 arms with 2 guns versus 330 people, each of which has a gun. Forget it. It's not going to happen. It's just like I was just talking with somebody today. Like if the public ever found out that the designs of the elite are to genocide the vast majority of the population, we would just say, well, screw you. Well, we're not going to do your bidding. We're not going to be your landscapers. We're not going to be your maids. We're not going to be your servants. We're not going to. We don't care how much money you have. We're just going to diss you. Completely diss you. You fix your own toilets. You fix your own hot water heater. You clean your own toilets. We're not doing any of that. See how long they survive, because they can't. Not without us.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, and it's going to be worse, I think, in the bigger cities. Like out here, if the power went out, I'd be fine. I wouldn't bother me, at least for days. I could probably go, you know, a couple weeks without power, and I would still make out. I would still be okay.
I mean, all you need really is a $60 inverter, and everybody has a car. All you got to do is get one of those car adapters, power the inverter off your car, if you have enough gas and run a power cable up here to your apartment, and that's it. You have power for at least the bare minimum basic needs, of running some kind of a light, some kind of a computer, and whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be the bigger cities that's going to be hit the hardest. Like, well, both of you kind of live in bigger cities than I do. That's 100%
Oh yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I live in the direct center of a big city, but like I said, even if you're not a prepper, even you don't have to buy anything. If you have a car, right, you could charge most cell phones in a car of a car adapter. So just make sure you have car adapters and you have a AC to DC to AC inverter, because if you have a car, you have a source of power right there.
Yeah, that is true. That is definitely true. Well, Lucky, what do you think would happen in your city? Now, I mean, you're in the East Coast, and there's population everywhere there. Do you think people would head out to the countryside, and or do you think they'd hunker down? Would they riot in the streets there? Give me your perspective on that.
I think it's going to be really bad, because even if you have a car and you can charge your stuff, the gas pumps run in power too. And unless they get a generator, which at that point, they're probably going to hunker down and take all the generators to the place that they want to protect. So there's going to probably be chaos. I'll fully admit that. And eventually they'll figure out, because everything is so automated right now. It's going to be a little while to fix everything. But again, I don't think, if the power went down on the East Coast, it would be total bedlam chaos, and there would be a lot of deaths quickly. I don't think probably a lot of deaths quickly, which is probably what they would want. To have them, let them fight it out, and then we'll come in. Actually, that's a good idea. After 2 weeks, after enough of the hoi polloi get together and knock each other off, then we'll come up to 2 weeks and save everyone, because we'll be desperate after 2 weeks. And that actually might be the idea, because they probably do have plans in place. They already have, because the big thing is, it's not government that's running this, it's corporations. And I'm sure all these corporations have a backup plan. Amazon, Facebook, Google, they probably have things in place. Hell, Elon Musk had a plan to go down to Puerto Rico when they had no power, with just how to set up, and they said, no, we don't want your stuff. So if Elon Musk could muster something up to save Puerto Rico, and they said no, thank you, which was weird. I think Puerto Rico is still suffering right now because of that. But Elon Musk was going to come in with something, and they said no, thank you, which was weird. But again, I think there are things in place, but they're not going to release it until 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month later, until we fight it out for a while. And I know for a fact that I will not have enough gas to go for a month. We'd probably be fighting out. There would probably be places full of gas that no one's going to be able to figure out how to get it out of there, because, it's automated. But rather than going over and opening up the little thing and sucking the gas out, which, some of us have options to do that if we work together. But again, let's just say that happens. They'd probably be fighting over it, and no one would get any gas, because we get covered with gas, and someone would light a match and burn everyone up, and then no more gas tanks, because that'd explode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely would be
fear. Yes, it would be bad for a month, I would guess, and then after that, it would be panacea. Everyone would be happy because the government would come in and save everyone. It would be a great plan, though.
Yeah, because they would get what they want, a survival of the fittest situation where they could get rid of, all these people on life support, all the people that are dependent on insulin, people in intensive care, old people. They probably wouldn't survive. But then again, every collapse is different. Just like you had the currency collapse in Argentina was different than like the currency collapse of Germany during 1922, 1923, where you had the hyperinflation. And I theorized that one of the things that you would see would actually be hyperinflation if you had a grid down scenario. big time hyperinflation, where that 1922, 1923 winter was also extremely brutal, and coal was like worth more than silver, where you could literally trade a big handful of silver for a small bucket of coal because people were freezing. And paradoxically, because prices rose so much that for the price of one BMW, you could actually buy the entire BMW factory if you just invested in the stocks.
Yeah.
That was the paradox of it. And the people who made out like bandits were the ones that were able to secure loans at any point before that happened, because then they were able to pay those off with worthless Deutschmarks. Right? That's one of the things in the back of my mind when I bought these houses. I used leverage, I used debt, because, like I said, A, the interest rate was lower than the CPI rate was, and B, I knew for a fact that in case of a situation like that, I'd be able to repay it with assets on hand.
Nice. Yeah, I never thought about that. So if you have debt and our dollar skyrockets, they don't inflate that debt, do they?
No, they don't. They can't. But also, that leads to other paradoxical situations like not enough food. Why? Because the farmers and the ranchers are holding out. Because every day that they delay bringing their goods to market, they get another like 20% up. They get 20% more money for every day that they hold out. So by the time that food gets to market, it's like gone bad, like the vegetables or the meat. So you have situations like city folk getting together, 5 guys in a car with guns or one gun, raiding a farm, shooting 2 heads of cattle and bringing it back to the city, because the farmers weren't willing to do that because they were holding out.
Well, and I agree, but see, I think nowadays we're in a little more of a pickle with technology. That as soon as the stores, I went shopping today, so I got this fresh on my mind. You go to that store, and every product that they have has that SKU number, and they shoot, So I get there, and one of the products I brought to the counter didn't have a SKU on it. And the guy was like, I don't know where to scan it. Well, the price is $7.95, and I got 2 of them. I can't just put that in. Well, I'm sorry. Well, we got to have I got to call somebody. I got to look. And he gets his book out and he tries, is it this one? Is it that? Well, it was $7.95. Well, there's no price in the book here. Was it this? I don't know. I'll call somebody. And then he gets something. And then 20 minutes later, he finds it in the book. Bloop, there we go. That's not. Oh, it's kind of close. Well, I guess that's it. So without that bloop bloop, because nobody knows what the prices are, they will shut the grocery store may have a whole thing of food, say, and they may have a generator to keep the freezers going and all of these other things, but because they're not hooked to the internet or all of that other stuff, or maybe their scanners ain't working. I don't know how it goes, but well, they may just shut the stores, lock the door. And I think that's where the people are going to be like, hey, the stores, they won't sell it. They lock their doors. I am hungry. I've been here for 2 weeks and I know there's food in the store over there. So why can't I go get, well, there's no power. They can't let you in. Their little machines won't go, Well, I would be pissed. I'd be like, you got a warehouse full of food. We can't sell any of it. Sorry. You let it rot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're out of luck. Yeah, I know it doesn't make any sense, but that's because you're dealing with a corporate entity, right? Like if you're dealing with like a mom and pop shop owner, of course he knows all those prices by heart, so he doesn't need that little bloop 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 thing, And he could probably like rattle off the prices right then and there, and he would probably be more open to accepting something like silver in payment instead of some overinflated currency, right? Because don't forget, during a lot of the hyperinflations, notably the one that happened here in Germany, you by law had to every store had to hire 2 additional people for the time that the crisis lasted. One that would just change the prices on an hourly basis of all the goods in the store, and another to help with the counting of the currency because there was just so much of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
back then, the bill counters weren't that common.
Yeah. That's true. Allie Berry says learning to forage in the wild is always a wonderful skill, and that is true. There's no doubt about foraging. But now just think of it: a city of 20,000 people, and the power goes out, and you get 20,000 people going to forage. All the foraging food, even if it's only 5,000 people out of that 20,000 go out to forage, the foraging will be wiped out in a day or two.
At that
no,
point,
that's not going to happen. No one's.
Yeah.
People are idiots. People are not going to learn to forage. The people who are going to learn to forage are the ones who are going to survive. And let's keep it that way. Shh! Stop it! Stop it! Yes, I know how to forage. I know very well that I can walk out into I live in the middle of a city, and I can walk out in the conservation land and probably feed my family for at least, a month if we had no, which I have. My basement has food, all kinds of food, because I'm ready. But I'm not afraid of anything, but I am prepared. So yes, foraging is actually really easy. My backyard is growing with weeds. Oh, it's so terrible. I get my neighbors. Oh, the front lawn. I'll manicure it and make it nice, beautiful for you. The backyard, that's mine, full of all kinds of weeds. Oh, terrible weeds. All of them are edible. I know what's
Not
edible.
just that, but
that's all
a lot
of
of
it. Yeah.
a lot of them are healing herbs too, either edible or healing herbs. A lot of what passes for weeds are actually medicinal herbs. But that said, it's never too late to invest in something like a wood burning stove. I mean, I have in this house alone. I have 3 of them, right? And one of them's like a built-in unit that's built into the house, but the other one's a freestanding one where if I light the fire, I can actually boil water on top of it because it functions as a hot plate. So I can cook my own food, and I do have reserves that I could cook if the need arose. And yes, as Max Vision pointed out, having a Bic lighter, you need one. Yeah, definitely.
Well, no, you really don't, because if you can use a flint and you can use a
magnifying glass.
No, no. I'm talking about darkness. You basically, there's a way of using the striker, which is, it's not that complicated. Everyone's so hard it is to use those things. A little bit of lint from the dryer goes up really quickly. It's easy to start that stuff up. So there is always, like I said, I am prepared for anything that might possibly happen. My wife can't hold a lighter and it goes away. Me, I can light anything. Not a big problem. I'm not worried about anything. But I'm also, my mother used to call me a pyromaniac because I could set a fire anywhere at any time. But when it came to starting the bonfires in the field for the horses, so we could get some of that brush away. Oh, who would call the pyromaniac? I could start anything going,
Yeah.
Because she goes so frustrated because she says, "This wood, it's so wet. I can't start it. It's impossible. You go try." And of course, within half an hour, I got the thing going up in an inferno. And she says, "Yeah, you're just a pyromaniac." I'm like, "Well, you called me to do it, and I did it, didn't I?"
Yeah, I mean, I was not only was I a Boy Scout, but back in the '80s, we would drink. We'd have like clandestine parties in the woods, which gradually became like semi-permanent structures that we called Campyland, where we built like these shacks in the woods that had like a barrel, and we'd light a fire in there. So yeah, I got pretty good at making a fire even in the rain. It's not that hard.
Yeah, we got in trouble with that because one year we came out to our hideout and it was all these weird plants. We didn't know any better. We were dumb kids. Alcohol was our thing. We were into pot and marijuana,
Same
and that's
here.
what happened. They used that area as a clandestine place to grow their pot, and I'm like, "Where's those crazy stuff?" When we started talking to people, and they go, "Don't go back there. If you get caught, they might shoot you if they catch you." I'm like, what are you talking about? That's what we found out, that we happened to. Our old hideout became a pot growing place.
Oh my God. See, because I grew up in New Jersey, we used to hang out inside like toxic waste dump areas. So, yeah, I kid you not.
Wow. Allie was saying something about the weeds are abundant. The acorns are abundant. I know you got a lot of abundant acorns out there. You got a lot of oak trees there in Massachusetts area.
No, last year we had no acorns at all. It was really weird. My area had no acorns. My mother was complaining about her acorns and still don't know what was going on. But I
What
was so stunned.
What about chestnuts?
Those are all dead.
Oh,
the chestnut trees are dead. They're all gone.
That wasn't there fungus or something that killed them all?
Yeah, well, it was Dutch elm disease started killing a lot of things, and the chestnuts went with them.
Yeah. See, and that's another thing. We've wrecked our abundance out there, but in some ways. But I want to say how, like, okay, so when the settlers, going back in history, when they moved west, they seen the buffalo, and the Indians were, I mean, I've read about this so many times. The Indians were always so mad because they would just come through and see the herd and just start shooting buffalo everywhere. And well, they would, and maybe the liver and whatever part they needed to move on, and they didn't want to take there's so many buffalo. I would just shoot some more tomorrow, And the Indians are like, we work really hard to use pretty much every part of that thing. And you just take the tongue and the liver or whatever, just what you need to eat tonight, and and waste the rest. Oh, they had every right to be mad. It's like going to the farmer's field there and saying, well, power grid's down and I'm hungry. I'm going to shoot a cow and I'll take the tongue and a good chunk of steak. And these got 100 of them out there. I'll shoot another one tomorrow. What do you think's going to happen? He's going to come out there. He's going to be pissed as can be.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that must have been horrible for the Indians. But then again, in a lot of instances, they did that on purpose so that the Indians would lose their ability to be self-sufficient. Yes. It was actually one of the first many acts of genocide that were perpetrated against the Indians. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and that's true, So, but like I said, the idea of sending those people out, the government knew the plan, but the people, the settlers didn't know the plan. They were just moving on, and they realized that they would get rid of the abundance because people do that. They come through, they destroy everything in their wake, and they don't worry about, there's some acorns here. Well, we're going to eat these acorns, and they will scour everyone up, and then they will not know how to, render them from all that acid by boiling them and skinning them and soaking them and doing all that work to make them into flour. And they will say, oh, I gathered buckets and trash cans. I got all these acorns, and they didn't turn out, so I just dumped them in the river, and so now all these people go out there and they're like, oh, there's no acorns. Well, I gathered them up and they were crappy.
Well, but see, that's the thing. Well, chestnuts are a lot easier to prepare because all you got to do is put them roast them over a fire. I'm surprised that in the U.S. they're not sold as a popular street food like there are in Europe, where you can get like roast chestnuts, and usually they're just salted, but they're delicious.
Yeah, they are good. When I went to visit England, that was one of the things we did. We roasted chestnuts. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I've did it before. It was very interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, they sent those people out there as part of the doctrine that they called manifest destiny, that the U.S. was destined by God, or whatever they want to call it, to extend from one sea to the other shining sea, right? That's why they made up all these fables about gold being discovered in California to get people to want to move there and possibly settle along the way because they wanted that territory. That was the strategy. That was the strategy behind sending Lewis and Clark to the Pacific Northwest. They wanted to map it out, see what kind of natural resources were there, because don't forget, back then, they didn't know about a lot of these natural resources that we use today. They didn't know about the usefulness of stuff like cobalt or aluminum. I don't think aluminum had even been discovered at that time.
Yeah. Well, and they definitely didn't know about oil or coal and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Although Lewis and Clark expedition, they talked a lot about the soil. If you ever read some of their things, and about how many animals there were, and how many they were looking at animals, they were looking at soil, the mountains, the terrain, the rivers. The rivers were highways, the soil was for farming, minerals wise for like, silver and gold kind of thing. Is there anything out there like that? Blah, blah, blah. And, how what's going to attract people to go out there? That, I think that was the big thing. What's going to attract you? Like you said about discovering gold in California. That was great, but they already knew there was gold in California. Yeah. They've been mining gold in California for, 100 years already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same with Nevada. They set up one of the first mints was set up in Carson City, Nevada, and that's part of the story of the TV show Bonanza. Part of that show covers the discovery of the Comstock lode, right? Comstock lode was the largest discovery of silver in U.S. history, and virtually all of it was used to mint the so-called Morgan dollars, right, which were minted up until 1921. And the irony of it being that if you look at that Morgan dollar, it's supposed to be a woman, like Lady Liberty. But if you look closely at it, it looks a lot like Michael Landon, who starred in Bonanza, who was one of the co-stars of Bonanza.
It does.
So that's like an interesting historical Mandela effect or coincidence right there.
It is kind of funny. He did have that long. He did look like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought of it like that. That is so funny. But yeah. All these things, like even with the gold in the Black Hills. We know that I did quite a few shows on that. How they sent General Custard, out there. To actually find the gold and say, yeah, there is gold out there. And he came back and spread the news, even though he wasn't supposed. They'd already made a treaty with the Indians not to go out there, and yet he took a big brigade, a campaign went out there to look for the gold. And when he came back, yep, there's gold. And of course, what happened? Oh boy, the flood of people into Indian territory.
Yeah,
and of course, that enraged the Indians because, hey, what are you doing out here? You're shooting more buffalo. You're cutting the trees down. You're destroying the land. You're, shooting. They didn't have anything, so they're shooting deer and elk and all of these things just to survive. It's there. Well, that was the Indians' resources.
and at the same time, the white Europeans had just moved in there, right? Being immigrants on Indian soil, and right from the start, they were complaining about all the Chinese immigrants that were coming in from across the Pacific. So how does that equate, right? They're complaining about immigration. Like, don't you think the Indians would have complained even more about immigration since, they were actually the first unwilling recipients of it? But, getting back to the whole power thing, I think that we still don't know everything that the government knows about power generating systems. In other words, there are systems of generating power that we are not privy to, that some agency like DARPA has developed. Because there's, you look at any of them, whether it's coal-fired power plants or nuclear power plants or hydroelectric or windmills or solar, all inefficient, and all of it has its own fatal flaws. I think the only country that's really solved the problem would be Iceland, where for the most part they use geothermal, right? And of course it's more expensive to construct like a geothermal plant because you got to dig pretty deep and make a borehole. But after that, it's pure profit. And as a matter of fact, they're generating so much heat from it that they heat their sidewalks and their city streets in the center of Reykjavik for free, and they do that to keep it from accumulating snow in the winter.
Wow, that's the way to solve the snow problem.
If you can heat your sidewalks in your city for free, then for Christ's sake, and of course, electricity is costs next to nothing in Iceland. I've been there, so in other words, there is a way that this could be done.
Well,
Mhm.
Iceland, they developed a way of actually using solar power to separate hydrogen from oxygen to have another source of energy, and
Yeah,
that went away really fast. It was
yeah,
supposed to be the next big thing. The
hmm
thing was out as big as like a small apartment, but
hmm
it was generating hydrogen and oxygen, and it was
hmm
storing the hydrogen, and they had it available so they could, it was be this thing you could buy hydrogen, small bottle, pop it in your car, easy peasy, no danger because it's only about this big and would give you like so many 100 miles because this hydrogen is so concentrated. It was a great idea. And what would happen? It would just knock out the oil industry, because the carburetor was going to be replaced. It was basically be dual function. It'd be easy, no big deal.
hmm
Now they have dual function, which is you got the propane and gas, so that doesn't
hmm
bother the oil companies there. But
Yeah,
Well,
there in the
propane.
1950s, yeah, 1950s they had a car that was running on 100 miles on a gallon.
hmm
And that guy mysteriously died. Mysteriously,
There's a
over and
couple
over
of
and over again.
such
70s,
technologies.
80s, 90s,
Yeah,
people mysteriously died from their inventions that were getting multiple
yeah.
miles per gallon.
If you just look into something like the Joe cell, right, which is a system for generating hydrogen and oxygen mixture from water that you could use to power a car. And you could
Hmm.
retrofit that to an existing car with a carburetor.
Yep.
It was discovered by an anonymous Australian guy named Joe,
Yeah.
and it actually works, right? As a matter of fact, in the United States, they discovered an alloy that if you made a cup out of it and just poured ordinary water into it, it would instantly start dissociating into hydrogen and oxygen, elemental hydrogen and oxygen. So, if they can do that, then what are we doing with all these coal-powered plants? If you've ever driven past one, they are a nightmare. I mean, there's a big coal-powered plant in northern Bohemia in Tušimice, and if you drive past that, you have to turn your lights on, of course, because it's dark like the night, because that cloud just goes over the whole landscape, polluting everything.
Hmm.
It's a nightmare. So while accidents involving coal power usually extend only to like the miners themselves in a mine collapse or whatever, nuclear power is much more dangerous because it affects like a huge area with huge amounts of people, and it's contaminated for thousands of years. So, to everybody saying that nuclear power is the clean alternative, no, that's not the case. Why else would Germany decide to close down something like 30 of its all of its nuclear power plants, following the Fukushima disaster? Because it's just way too
it's
dangerous.
great. It's great as long as it works. And then
Yeah,
once it stops working or there's an accident, it's worse than any amount of coal you could burn in a lifetime. That's the
yeah.
problem.
And the problem with the wind turbines, which are popping up all over Europe, is that they're inefficient. Because if you just look at the shape, they're only the cross-sectional surface area of those propeller blades is way smaller than it could be, right,
Hmm.
to catch all the wind in that cross section. So that's kind of inefficient. And you can tell that just by looking at it. A better alternative is to use a cogeneration system like the Power Nest, right? Power at capital NEST, where they combine like spiral windmills that are omnidirectional, and above those you have bidirectional solar panels. In other words, solar panels that can generate electricity from top rays of the sun coming from top and reflected ones off the bottom. And by having the solar panels above those airfoils, that's acting using the so-called Coanda effect to concentrate that aerodynamic energy between the surface, the surface of the Earth, and the solar panels, funneling that between those past those turbines. So that's probably the most efficient system for these renewable resources. But again, that's limited because you have to be in a place that gets good sunlight and good wind, where you don't usually have both of those in Europe. In Europe, we have winter for like 9 months out of the year. If you look at it on a map, the latitude that we're on is actually the one I'm on is actually southern Hudson Bay, which is northern Ontario.
Mhm.
So we don't get as much sunlight over here as you guys do over there. Few people realize that New York City is on the same latitude as Sicily, which is like the southernmost point of Europe.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
There's a map like that, so how shows how high. I mean, Paris is north of Ontario, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's amazing. A lot of the major European cities are are in middle Canada.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're like very close to the Arctic Circle, and some of the European countries are actually past that, like all of the Lapland countries of Scandinavia.
Yeah. Well, like England would be farther too, and yet they got really good weather.
No, that's only thanks to the Gulf Stream, which takes some of the heat and moves it around across the Atlantic. That's why, like for example, Holland is on the same latitude as like Prague, roughly. But when I was there in February for 2 weeks, not once did I have to put on my winter coat. No, because it wasn't just not that cold. It gets windy over there. That's why almost all the Dutch people I've ever seen had like either short hair or shaved heads. Even the woman, because of all the wind over there.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I think we've been a little over our hour, but I appreciate you guys coming on talking about this because it is a fascinating subject. What would happen?
Oh yeah.
In your own little area, you're in the whole city. Why? And I've asked myself this too. And yes, I'm a little prepared. I got a few things. I got a generator and everything. But the fear mongering is, oh, that generator ain't gonna work if it ain't in a Faraday cage, and this and that. And do you have any gas? Well, not everybody's gonna have those things supplied and in their garage or wherever. A lot of people live in apartments. They don't have any of that stuff. When the power goes off, their freezer goes off, their electric stove don't work, their refrigerator shuts off, and they're going to be at the mercy of the world
Looters
around.
Yeah, you got to protect your stuff from people that didn't prepare, right? In other words, you don't talk about what you have.
You know what's going to happen is people are going like, oh, what we have no way of having heat inside of our house, but we have this gas grill. Let's bring it inside the apartment, and they're going to knock out everyone in the apartment complex.
Carbon monoxide poisoning. Yeah,
that's probably when a bunch of people are going to get killed by carbon monoxide by people using their gas grills inside.
Oh yeah, well, the worst part it is too is you take that grill inside, and the next thing you know, they're cooking some greasy shit, and it catches on fire, and the next thing you know, their apartment complex is burning down. And there's no fire department that's going to show up to put it out either. Now everybody loses their house.
Well, and again, you can eliminate some of the problems, So it's they'll be fighting over limited housing because those people are going to lose their houses. They got to go somewhere else. The powers that be going to wait a good 2 weeks to a month, and they're going to have less people to deal with. And, and people are going to be desperate and going to thank you for saving us.
Yes. Yes, it's gonna be Chicago fire. Well, Chicago fire. There's literally been a big fire in every single major city, from New York to Massachusetts to Boston and London. Yeah, the great fires of yesterday have burnt those cities down at least once or twice. Who says they can't do it again?
True. Yeah.
So anyway. With that, everybody, it's something to think about. Go out there and do your own homework. If you find this subject fascinating, what could happen? Is it a solar thing? Is it something geomagnetic? Is it something else? Whatever it might be a little prepared. Have a little extra food on hand because you never know what might be around the corner and when that power may go off and maybe when it will come back on. And that's the biggest thing. Remember, have a little extra food, because your neighbor is probably going to come knocking on your door too and saying, I don't have anything. I'm hungry. My kids are starving. And you know what happens when a parent needs their kids to be fed? They'll do pretty much anything. So thank you guys for coming on and talking about this. You're both very smart. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Mary Wins, Allie Berry, Black Raven Research Lab. Thank you for being here tonight. Elderberry was in the house. And Max Vision, he's probably got a show here coming up. So go over there and expand your mind, do a little remote viewing. Richard, the Red, is here tonight. Thank you, Richard, for being here. A lot of other people in here, and a lady Spitfire who joined us tonight. She had to hit the sack, so thank you for being in tonight. Loretta Igna was here. Let's see who else. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but thank you all. It's been really great. Remember to join me on Tuesday night for Native American Myths and Legends. And tomorrow night, I won't be on Nina's show. She's got Laura Eisenhower on. So get on over there. There's Trina. Trina Phoenix is in the house. And hello there.
Hey.
Hello. Thank you for, oh yeah, she was there. Okay, anyway. But anyway, I want to wrap this up with, you just go out and be nice to your neighbor. Make friends with them. Learn who they are, good or bad. It might pay off in the end, especially if the power goes out and you don't know how to get a hold of people. At least you can talk to somebody and make a connection. With that, everybody go out and be the frequency you want to receive, everybody. Love you all. Peace, everybody.